their way. What model is it? Well, it's a 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59 automobile. It's a 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70.
So from Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, for the last generation,
I'm
you have a choice.
BakerMarshall.com, the Republican
I
candidate
did
for
not
governor.
have sexual relations with
And I
that
realized that this is something
Miss
he
Lewinsky.
is
We're not going to
inherent.
be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
Hey, good morning, Clevelanders. Welcome to Whoop Radio Backfire Show this morning with John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. Good morning, guys.
Good morning, Steve.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, it's Wednesday already. Boy, this week goes fast as the older you get, doesn't it?
Weeks, months, and years.
Life.
Days, minutes,
Gray hair shows up more and more.
gray hairs. Well, Obama's got a lot of gray hairs right now.
We had a guy in Rotary talking about skin cancer and aging, and he showed some pictures of Bush before and after and Obama before and after, and it is rather striking.
You know, I guess it happens to all these presidents in their mid-age.
That's one thing I think we all agree on, no matter which party the president comes from. It's a stressful job.
Well, frankly, I noticed you're starting to get a little gray hair on your goatee there.
Since I started doing Backfire.
and you know, having to defend this administration, that's a real yeoman's task.
Well, anyway, you know, I haven't had time to keep up with the news a lot lately, but doesn't seem like I even have to. Every time I turn it on, there's a new something coming out. Let's start with some local things this morning, though. This morning in the Chattanooga Times, it looks like the Times is trying to blast our governor over something here. It says Chicago firm had ties to the governor. Company awarded contract to manage state office buildings. And anyway, go on to find out that Governor Haslam had some interest in this company through his blind trust, which he knew nothing about. And
Well, he owned the stock before he was elected, and when he was elected, as by what you expect the law provides, he put all of his interest in a blind trust.
yeah, right. Anyway, this company based out of Chicago. I don't know why anybody do business with anybody in Chicago. I don't know. There's a lot of good people in Chicago, but
A few.
Yeah. But anyway, this company has won a huge award to start managing some government buildings. Well, you know, the GSA has got a lawsuit filed, and you know, some of these other contractors that deal with the government, I think, are trying to stir up a lot of hoo-la-la over it. But
Well, I mean, it was a competitively bid contract, and they were the low bidder.
well, and I understand that, but
That's the question, whether the bid was done in the correct manner or not. If it is, I don't see that it's much of an issue. I looked at the article this morning, and people on both sides of the aisle had asked for investigation of this to determine that everything was done correctly, because it's two reasons. One, it's about a $38 million contract over the life of it. And second, it appears that it results in, more than 100 Tennessee employees being outsourced, so to speak, whether or not they'll be able to keep their jobs or not. But if it was done with the correct methodology, then I don't have a problem with it.
Well, I mean, the employees have gone to court, and a federal judge, which I have a problem with this, federal judge has blocked their layoffs, which is more unelected judges sticking their nose into the representative process. But having said that, 150 of them are going to lose their job, but 5 million Tennesseans will save money.
yeah. Anyway, it doesn't surprise me that an outsourcing a private contractor could do something for less than a government contracting agency.
Well, it's been shown over and over again to work.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, the saga goes on. The Times wanted to make a big headline out of that. I'll tell you something else, John. It's something I was going to probably talk about today, but it's already made headlines in the Chattanooga Times this morning. It's this church weighs our scouts' gay rules. And, you know, I know you've been a scout and you've been very involved in this all these years, but what's happened to the scouts lately is pretty atrocious, I think. And now they've been forced to allow what?
Well,
I'm not how the rules work.
I'm very loyal to the Boy Scouts, but I won't cut them that slack to say they were forced. They were bullied and beaten and pummeled, obviously, but they gave in, and I'm still supportive of them. It's a good program, but I'm disappointed that they gave in. Now, it's a shame that in this culture where we talk about bullying being such a terrible thing, that we allow it when it's a politically correct group that does the bullying.
That's a good point. What do you think, Franklin?
Well, the Boy Scouts went through what I would describe as a democratic process in their organization. They have a national council or convention, and their voting members voted on this issue.
After several progressive company presidents threatened them with cutting off their money, and after petitions went out, after people showed up at scout meetings and picketed and protested. Here's my problem with it. There's no common sense in this, because if you think about that for a minute, we take young men, boys as young as 11 years old, and you take them on overnight scouting trips. So what this is saying is that we now have to allow openly gay scouts in the troop, which means you're going to stick an openly gay scout in a tent with let's say, a straight boy. Now, one, there's no place for sexualization in the scouting, so I have a problem with it from that standpoint. Once you start down that road, it's hard. It shouldn't even be talked about.
Right.
But once you say openly gay, what you've done is you've invited people who are sexualizing it, who are openly talking about it. So you're going to tell my son that he has to undress, shower, sleep in a tent with a boy who may or may not be attracted to him. My problem with it is, would we expect the Girl Scouts to do the same thing? Because I can tell you, when my daughter was a Girl Scout, the fathers aren't allowed to take the girls on an overnight trip. Well, why is that? Are all fathers, one of the things, if you say it about gays, you're supposedly claiming that all homosexual men are pedophiles. Well, is the Girl Scout saying that all fathers are pedophiles? No, they're simply making a common sense idea that because I'm a straight man, I'm attracted to the female species, so it's not good business to have me taking little girls on an overnight trip. But yet now we've forced the Boy Scouts to have boys have to share tents and share showers with other boys who may be attracted to them. It's political correctness at the expense of all the straight boys.
Well, go ahead, Frank.
Well, I was just going to say, it seems to operate from the assumption that those kids in many cases weren't on the trips anyway.
Franklin, they may be. That's the whole point, though. Now what you've done is you've actually invited them to bring sexual content and sexual thought into the process. This idea that don't ask, don't tell is some kind of bad, you're right. We've always known it. But we didn't talk about it. And when you didn't talk about it, there's a lot of things we don't talk about. Franklin, you may go out to eat with neighbors who perhaps have some very strange after-hours activities. But as long as you don't know about it, it's not a problem, is it?
I don't know if it's a problem or not.
I mean, how do you even get into the point in scouting about gays?
Well, isn't the
not a place to be?
Isn't the problem though that isn't this issue created in part because the Scouts had official policy banning it?
Now, wait, let me ask you a question.
I'm just asking you that question.
All right, let me ask you a question, Franklin. Are you going to go into the Muslim community and tell them that they can't allow honor killings? And we fuss about all kinds of things. Private organizations are allowed to have their opinions. The Supreme Court ruled that the Boy Scouts, as a private organization, could have whatever group they wanted to. Stacey Campfield, state senator up here in Knoxville, applied for membership to the Black Caucus, and they refused him membership because he wasn't black. You're going to tell the Black Caucus that they have to take white people now because they didn't seem to want to do that? I mean, the problem is we pick and choose which groups we force to be inclusive and which groups we allow to be non-inclusive.
Well, it seems to me that the Boy Scouts is no different from any other organization in that
Private organization?
Well, any private organization.
Okay.
In the sense that people on both sides of the political spectrum spend a lot of time trying to bring pressure on the other groups to engage in behavior that they find acceptable. I don't know why we would spare the Boy Scouts from that. We do it to everybody else.
Well, frankly, the gay community didn't seem to want to let churches practice the idea that you could be changed. You know, that they could counsel you back into being straight. They went to town over how egregious that was and how insulting. And matter of fact, it was actually medically damaging, according to them. So these same groups didn't seem to want to afford churches the ability to decide, you know, that they could offer a counseling program for changing gays back. But yet here they want to tell the Boy Scouts what they can and can't do. It's just...
No, they didn't tell them what they can and can't do.
Yeah, they did. They
brought
bullied
pressure on an organization. I don't know what the views of the members of the scouting community were before all this happened. I don't know. I don't know that it was ever surveyed.
Well, as you watch area churches drop the scouting program, as you see, probably the Canadian Scouts did this about 10 years ago, and they saw about a 60% drop in their membership rates. So congratulations, gay and lesbian lobby. You now probably have helped bring about the end of one of the most effective youth programs in the history of the country.
That was going to be my next question is, do you think the Scouts can survive? You know, there's a lot of the Baptist Church Association or something talked about getting out of scouting. In the Chattanooga Times this morning, 2 area congregations will drop the sponsorship already.
Well, one of them, if you read the story, is exactly what we said all along. What they're concerned about is not just the moral issue, but they're concerned about the legal liability.
That's right.
Because as a church, since they teach homosexuality is wrong, if they follow that belief and they say, well, we're not going to allow our scout troop to have openly gay scouts, then they then open themselves up to a lawsuit. That's what we said all along, and I will be honest with you, there is not a doubt in my mind that the gay and lesbian lobby that pushed this, they knew what this would do. They go, oh, it'll allow them to decide on their own. No, it won't. They're scared to death of being sued, and they knew what it would do.
Well, maybe we ought to just make sure that there can't be any lawsuits over this. What do you think, Franklin? We just cannot sue, and that would solve all this?
I don't know anything about any wave of lawsuits involving them.
It's not wave of lawsuits. It's the liability and the potential for lawsuit. The church is looking at this going, if we go out on, in other words, it's not the Boy Scouts of America that would be sued for an official policy. It's the individual churches that would get sued for their local policy. And we said that all along. If you push this off on the local churches, none of them are going to want to assume that legal liability.
Let's be clear here. This is not a law that's been passed by the government. This is a decision made by the National Scouting Organization based upon a vote of their voting membership. Now, you may not like whether people put pressure on them or not, but that's what happened. They didn't have to vote that way. They did.
I agree. I'm not disagreeing on that fact, but it's the gay and lesbian lobby that, look, I've been in Scouts my whole life, Franklin. We didn't talk about this crap. We didn't talk about discriminating against anybody because we didn't talk about sexual orientation.
And that's actually what
we didn't buy bottled water.
It wasn't an issue because nobody rubbed it in anybody's face.
And I don't know that that's going to happen now.
Absolutely, that's going to happen. That is exactly what the gay and lesbian lobby wanted.
Well, it's a sad
let me ask you a simple logistical question, Franklin. If you've got a 14-year-old boy and he is uncomfortable being in a situation where he's intimate as far as his dress or his hygiene, procedures in front of a homosexual boy, are you telling me that boy's discomfort, is that misplaced and he doesn't have a right to that?
No. What I would tell you is that teenagers in general are uncomfortable, period.
All right. Do we routinely allow boys and girls to shower together?
No.
Why not?
probably because we don't want them to get pregnant. Would be
so
the
you're
correct
saying
answer.
that the discomfort of a male and female being undressed in front of each other isn't a problem as long as there's no pregnancy involved?
No, I didn't say that. What I said is that's really the reason why.
Well,
we're
guess
concerned
what,
about
Franklin?
that.
The Boy Scouts have 3 different programs. The other 2 programs are for older teenagers, and they involve boys and girls. So should they now allow the boys and girls to share tents? We don't.
Same reason. We don't want pregnancy.
Why? But Franklin, you're missing my point.
No, I'm not missing
If
your
you
point,
can afford-
John,
if
and
you-
I'm not even trying to convince you that you're right or wrong. What I'm
You don't
saying
wanna
to
deal
you
with
is
the logistics
what I'm
of
saying
this.
to you is that this is a decision this organization made.
It is
They
a
didn't have to
decision
do
this
it.
organization made in the midst of a political climate that has been allowed to have the winners and the losers, the politically correct and the politically incorrect. And you've got a bunch of bullies and thugs that are forcing this down the
And
rest
this
of
is-
our throats.
Well, I don't know about the bullies and thugs part. I heard lots of people who were participating in that process, who were voting on it, who were very passionate about the issue, and I think you heard them too. And I don't think those people were being bullied. They had a very serious perspective on this and a real committed view that it was the right thing to do. It's part of a larger debate that's going on in our society, and the Boy Scouts is one manifestation
Actually,
of that.
Franklin, there's not a debate going on. Anybody that speaks out against homosexuality or against, really, to be honest, special rights for homosexuals is immediately targeted for derision and attack and boycotts. I mean, you can't, look at Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A didn't do anything publicly. They donated some money to some groups. And what they get? They got news stories, they got boycotts, they got picketing. This is a bunch of bullies and thugs cramming it down the rest
And
of our
as far
throats.
as I can tell, it doesn't seem to have affected Chick-fil-A one bit.
Well, they stuck to their guns.
They stuck to their
Unfortunately, the
guns.
Boy Scouts doesn't have the kind of, they don't produce revenue. They depend on people donating revenue. And they had enough of these people that got worried about their companies getting slandered like Chick-fil-A was, that said, look, we want you to do this so we're protected. And just so you all know out there, by the way, folks, it was Ernst & Young accounting firm, and it was AT&T were the 2 main board members that forced this issue.
All right.
Of what?
They told the Scouts
Scouts,
that they would
okay.
pull out and remove all of their money that they fund, and they're huge funders. They've become huge funders of the program. And the Scouts, I'm sure part of this was a concern over their revenue stream.
Let's change the subject a little bit. Getting back to some local things here, the city, I was just reading this out of the paper here, the city okays the budget, and then they have a property tax vote set later. It looks like it's going to be 18.
Oh, no. Don't let them get away with 18%. It's not, some people will get up at close to 25% or more.
18 cents. 18.5 cents.
18.51 cent property tax increase.
But you've also got about a 7 cent that goes in supposedly to adjust for the decrease in property values through the assessment. The problem is not everybody got a decrease. Some people actually saw an increase. So if you saw an increase, you're going to get the 18 cents. You're going to get about 7 cents more. And the worst part of this is if you're a small business, or worse than that, let's say a renter, somebody who owns rental property, you're taxed at 40%. Not 25.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge property tax.
Well, one of the councilmen said that they have just cut to the bones.
They've cut nothing. The budget has gone down a couple $1,000s out of a $40 million budget over the last couple of years.
Well, according to the banner, they've just cut to the bone.
Well, it's a shallow bone. It's a shin bone cut then. It's certainly not the thigh.
Let's see here. I read this real quickly. I've got the numbers here from last year to this year. Let's see. 578 million. I better not read this. Anyway, there's some numbers if you can figure it out.
Well, they don't want you to be able to figure it out. I mean, here's the real problem. I had a resident on the south side talk to me a couple of days ago. He saw his property tax appraisal go up. And he said that from what he had talked to his neighbors, a lot of them had gone up. So he was very concerned that the south side saw increase in their property values while the north side saw a decrease. Now his point was the south side is really our more economically challenged area. So those people are actually going to get a significant tax increase through the reappraisal. The very people that are probably being hit the worst in this economy. And you got your businesses. Think about a small business. Obamacare's kicking in January. We have no idea what impact that's going to have, and now you've had a local property tax increase lumped on top of that.
Yeah. Obamacare, nobody, even Obama doesn't know what that's going to cost.
Well, and on top of that, part of this, and I know I'm going to make people mad that work in government, they're getting a 3.5% raise is part of this for the city employees. I'm sorry, do you think the vast majority of taxpayers in Cleveland and Bradley County have had a 3.5% raise? Now, those are the taxpayers that will be paying for this.
John, where do you think the city could cut some more funding?
Well, the problem is we allow government to do too many things. And once they're doing something for us, then we're happy they're doing it. And we, if you ask someone specifically, do you want them to quit doing this or quit doing that? They go, oh, no, I like that. The problem is they didn't used to do half of this stuff for us. We used to actually be self-reliant and take care of ourselves. Guess what? We burned our trash out in front of the barn every week. Piled it up, burned it.
You can't do that now. It's in the city.
Oh, better not do that. Might have some smoke out there. I've had them come out and go, well, that might get out of hand. Well, I'm sorry. We've burned it there for 80 years every week and somehow managed not to burn the place down. Apparently, I'm not smart enough to be able to watch a bonfire anymore.
I had somebody send me a text. I'll talk about it. It said the same thing happened about the gay issue you're talking about. It said the same thing happened when they let women serve in the military. Now we just have a record number of rapes to deal with.
Well, actually, the first year they put women on the aircraft carriers, the pregnancy rate in the Navy went up 40%. Now, the problem is you might decide to do it anyway, but we don't ever have honest discussions about it. The Boy Scouts, before they did that change, wouldn't allow any discussions of the logistics of how you do tent placement. Do you segregate the gay boys out from the straight boys so the straight boys don't feel uncomfortable? They didn't want that discussion of the logistics because it would get in the way of their political agenda. And the same thing with the Navy. But we're back on taxes, sorry.
All right, let's change the subject a minute. The New York Times came out the other day and finally blasted the Obama administration stating that he's lost all credibility.
But then they backed off of it 2 hours later.
Yeah, oh yeah. But I mean, it's amazing that they even came out and did that. To me, I mean, that's your most left-wing paper there is, I guess, or one of them at least. If they come out and start talking about it, so. It seems like, where do you think we're going with this president right now? Franklin, you got that look that you're trying to figure out what in the world. Where do you think we're going? Do you think the president can accomplish anything the rest of his term?
Sure, I do. And I think that's what's happening. The president is going about working on serious problems while everybody's...
How about Benghazi?
Not a serious problem.
Oh, not a serious problem.
No, not this obsession with talking points is not a serious problem.
What about the obsession with the fact that Stevens was in Benghazi to buy back Stinger missiles that the State Department authorized the sale of over the objections of the CIA?
Haven't seen a single shred of evidence to support that conclusion.
Because this administration won't come forward with it.
Where do you get it then, John? Did people in black
helicopters?
Everything
that's come out, Franklin, has come from the least transparent administration in history. It's all leaks because
Here's what
they
I'm going to do, John.
up.
I'm going to refer you again to your elected senator who says there's nothing here. Why don't you trust him?
Franklin,
Bob Corker's the one who says he's seen all this diplomatic traffic and he doesn't think there's anything there. And yet you want to talk about talking points.
Why don't we just listen to Hillary Clinton? It is what it is.
I'm just saying, when Republicans say it, you don't listen
Franklin,
to it.
what about the latest?
Because your obsession with this president is so out of control.
Oh, see, that's it. We're racist.
Yeah.
I didn't say anything about your racism.
That's the same thing. That's what everybody, when they start down that road of you're obsessed
here's what
with
I'm
this
saying. Here's what I'm saying to
if
you.
you criticize him, you're racist.
What about all these other campaigns?
What about the new State Department scandals that show we've got a U.S. ambassador that was skipping out from his security detail, hiring prostitutes, and apparently pedophilia. He was going after underage girls. He's called back to D.C. Patrick Kennedy tells him, don't be a bad boy, stop that, and sends him right back. And then Hillary's secretary actually suppresses the investigation into it. That's the internal investigators of the State Department themselves say they've been suppressed.
Well, the information I've seen so far is that there's been a complete denial and disavowal of any of this conduct.
Oh, are you telling me this Franklin? Every day, drip, 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 there's a new scandal.
No, there's
a
not.
New
There's not
cover-up.
a new scandal, and that's the point, John. You hype this stuff into a fantasy that doesn't exist. It's like this IRS thing. There's a serious issue to be looked at there, but the facts are the people who've come forward, who were Republicans, by the way, have come forward and said, you know what? We actually are the ones who came up with this idea.
Actually,
We're
there
the
are
ones who did
Cincinnati
it.
agents who have testified that they've actually named the lawyer in Washington that was directing a lot of this. We've not talked to him.
That is a bunch of crap.
It's not a bunch of crap.
It didn't happen,
Elijah
John.
Cummings can't even name this supposed Republican that he
you know
talked
why
to.
he can't name him? Because the chairman of the committee, the Republican, refuses to let all the transcripts be released. He only lets part of them out. This is what I'm talking about. You make this crap up, and that's what people talk about
Franklin,
instead of
I
the
tell you what,
serious issues
I won't
involved.
make any crap up. I'll just read from the State Department's
No, you'll just accept
Diplomatic
it if Fox
Security
News tells you
Service
that.
report, who says U.S. Ambassador to Belgium, Howard Gutman, over claims that he solicited prostitutes, including minors. The ambassador's protective detail and the embassy surveillance detection team were well aware of his behavior. Oh, but by the way, don't worry, folks. Gutman was a big donor to the president. He raised over $500,000 for him. And he's still the U.S. ambassador. By the way, Lois Lerner, the IRS agent in charge of all of this, who refused to resign, she still has access to our IRS computer. She accessed it as early as June 4th, just last week. Now, that's the computer that has all of the country's records in it.
What does that have to do
She's
with
on
anything?
administrative leave because she refused to resign over the illegal targeting of conservative groups, and they haven't cut off her access, her high security access to the IRS computers.
High security?
By security, I mean they are required to protect all the information in that. She has complete, unfettered access to all the files in
So
the
what
IRS.
are you suggesting? That she's
I think somebody should have
deleting
pulled.
them or what?
They should have pulled the plug on her computer. They asked her to resign. She refused to resign, and they don't even cut off her access to the computer.
What's going to happen to her, John?
Nothing will happen to her. She'll probably get a promotion like the other ones did.
You don't think that they'll push this to a point she'll need to be terminated, or she'll resign?
Let me give you an example of Lois Lerner. She puts on her official biography that she is a huge supporter of the, not the humane, does all the animal shelters across the country. I'm blanking out. Anyway.
The SPCA?
No, maybe it is. I guess it is the Humane Society. Mm-hmm. Huge supporter of the Humane Society. 3 years ago, a congressman sends her a letter stating that less than 1% of all the money they raise is used to provide shelter space for animals. And would she investigate their status? 3 years later, they won't even confirm whether there is an investigation. So here's an organization, 1% is all they're spending out of the total money that they raise. And you watch those commercials on TV. They raise hundreds of millions of dollars, and we can't investigate them. But we got Tea Party groups that couldn't even get approved for a 501c4.
Let's take a break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
Check into checking the cash. We'll beat any rates that don't pay the max.
Check Into Cash gives you more money for your title and the lowest title loan rate anywhere. We'll beat any rate on a title loan, and we guarantee it. So you'll save money. If you already have a title loan, ask Check Into Cash about paying it off. So if you're short on cash, think Check Into Cash.
No credit check, no runaround. Check Into Cash won't slow you down.
Check Into Cash, your one-stop money shop for 20 years. Now offering payday loans without a check. Great service, convenience, and locations.
Check into Cash. We'll beat any rates that don't pay the max. Oh, yeah. Check Into Cash is your money machine. Get on up and get down. Check Into Cash.
Bring proof of lower rate on similar title loan. Use payday advances responsibly. Visit checkintocash.com for the store nearest you.
When you buy or sell or pawn,
you can't go wrong at U.S. Money Shops.
when money's tight, you'll be alright.
'Cause relief's inside at U.S. Money Shops.
Hey, Glenn here from U.S. Money Shops. If you're looking for extra cash, whether it's $50, $500, or even $50,000, then U.S. Money Shops just may be the place for you. We're a pawn shop like no other. Buy, sell, pawn, we do it all.
Pawn with us,
we'll earn your trust.
sell to us without any fuss. Buy from us,
You can rely on us.
U.S. Money Shops offers the best selection of electronics, tools, firearms, jewelry, and more. You name it, we got it. So when you need cash or want a deal, visit U.S. Money Shops, the best pawn shop in town. And remember, we cash all checks and buy gift cards. Now with several locations to serve you. Visit U.S. Money Shops today for the best deal around.
buy or sell or pawn today. The better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Visit usmoneyshops.com for the store nearest you. The Plastic Surgery Clinic of Cleveland offers a variety of cosmetic solutions to help you achieve your personal goals. Whether it's Botox injections, liposuction, a tummy tuck, or breast reconstruction, Dr. Michael Hoops, Cleveland's only full-time board-certified plastic surgeon, will sit down and discuss your desired outcome and help determine what is best for you. The Plastic Surgery Clinic of Cleveland offers the convenience of Visa, MasterCard, and Discover, and has financing options available. Call for your consultation today with Dr. Michael Hoops and the Plastic Surgery Clinic of Cleveland, 472-1996, or visit hoopsplasticsurgery.com.
The Bald-Headed Bistro has a brand new menu offering more value for your dollar. The Bald-Headed Bistro, Western fine dining in the heart of the South. The best bar and happy hour in town. The Bald-Headed Bistro in the Village Green, Cleveland.
From check into cash, they're coming to town. Mighty Clydesdales of world renown. Such a rare sight, all black and white. Big excitement all around.
Check Into Cash, your one-stop money shop, introduces the Cashdales, our beautiful Clydesdale horses now touring the United States, representing our company heritage, appearing in parades, events, and visiting Check Into Cash locations.
2,000 pounds marching around, every hoofbeat shaking the ground. Tall as the sky, 18 hands high, they're gentle giants, so don't be shy.
Check Into Cash, now celebrating 20 years, is proud to present the beautiful Clydesdale horses. Visit cashdales.com for the upcoming schedule and more information.
Check Into Cash, they're on their way. The mighty Clydesdales will make your day.
Did you know that local businesses produce more income, jobs, and taxes that stay in your local community than national chain stores do? For every $100 spent in a locally owned business, $45 stays in the local economy, while only $15 stay locally when you buy at a national chain store. When you buy from Mermaid Mattress, you are shopping local. Plus, when you buy direct from the factory, you get a better mattress at a better price, guaranteed. But only at Mermaid Mattress here in Cleveland. 1/2 mile off 25th Street on Georgetown Road, right here in beautiful Cleveland, Tennessee. Call 472-2486. Locally in Cleveland at Mermaid Mattress, find out why Fro Daddy and Matador both sleep on a locally made mattress at Mermaid. You give them a call at 472-2486.
Mermaid Mattress Factory and Showroom.
The Village Bake Shop has been serving the sweet needs of folks in the area since 1961. Need a specialty cake? Well, all you need is a photo or just an idea, and Teresa at the Village Bake Shop will make sure you get that special cake for any occasion. I've enjoyed the Village Bake Shop for years and always got birthday cakes, wedding cakes, and more. Any cake for any special occasion from the Village Bake Shop is always fresh and delicious. And of course, the Village Bake Shop has all your other sweet cravings taken care of too. Plus their world-famous thumbprint cookies that are shipped all over the world. The Village Bake Shop, Village Green Town Center, right here in Cleveland. Phone 476-5179. Wheeler Technologies has moved. Visit them at their new location at 490 Grove Avenue Southwest next to Bradley Rentals. Same great folks, same great service with a better location to serve you. Call Wheeler Technologies for voice, data, and security needs at 664-TECH. That's 664-8324. And remember, depend on Wheeler Technologies for the current time and temperature every day at 476-1111. Tennessee Alarm Contractor C1750.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Woo FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
All right, welcome back. We're going to open up the phone lines here in just a minute and let you ask a question if you have one for our panel here. 614-5553. Should Eric Holder resign? That's my next question.
Why?
Why not? I mean, which issue do you think he should resign over? Which one? Wow. It's not whether he should, it's which one should he use as the justification.
Yeah. You don't think he should resign?
No.
Franklin?
You think this is a good Department of Justice?
What I think is that they're operating in a legal framework largely created by the previous administration.
Oh, my God, it's Bush's fault.
No, hold on. No.
We're going all the way back to Bush again.
No.
It's still his fault.
Well, he is the gift that keeps on giving, but...
yeah, for people that won't accept responsibility for their own lives.
And their own mistakes.
And operating in that framework, and then once somebody operates under the laws that your party passed, then suddenly they're bad ideas.
Oh, no, Franklin, we're not talking about that. We're talking about this. One, he's been held in contempt of Congress. He's probably going to be held again. And what he testified to in May was an outright lie.
No, it wasn't.
And matter of fact, James Clapper, the security advisor, is outright lied. And this is a Democrat, Ron Wyden from Oregon, asked him point blank, are you all listening in on Americans' conversations and information? No. And he said, not at all, not at all.
You asked more than one question there, John.
All of them are lying. They're all liars.
The whole administration's lying right now, I think. Let's take a call. Go ahead, caller.
Hello, guys.
Hey.
To Franklin, when we were discussing local tax increases, I did not hear his point of view. I guess my overall assumption is that he is then for that tax increase at this time.
Well, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I have mixed feelings about it. Part of it was the idea that we needed to, or at least as the city has justified this, they have said basically that the police force is operating on a lesser staff now than they had 4 or 5 years ago. Through attrition and so forth, they haven't replaced those things, and that now that they're underserved, so to speak. I'm not sure that I necessarily agree with that particular
crime is down
view.
In the city.
Well, it is. Now they might argue that their efforts have something to do with that.
Well, my point is
I understand the point there, and so I'm not entirely comfortable with that. Now, to the extent that any of this property tax increase goes for infrastructure, school construction, so forth, then I think that's something that we ought to be doing on a long-term basis, and so I'm not opposed to that aspect of it.
But can I clarify that?
Sure.
If we're looking at the tax increase with an idea that it's going for long-term construction and infrastructure, it's going for debt payment. So your thought process that, okay, we're going to increase these taxes, we're going to be at this rate, and therefore we're going to have this section of money, this slice of money, or this percentage of money to pay for these needs in the future.
Well, when you say it's going for debt, are you talking about debt on bonds for schools construction, that sort of thing? Or are you talking about
I think
actual
what she's saying is the problem is that's money that's already spent. It's going to pay back debt for things we already have. And here's a problem that we never hear them discuss. The whole idea of growth in a community is the growth creates new revenue that then should theoretically pay for the services that new growth requires. So all we ever hear from them is, well, hey, we've grown, we need more police officers, so we got to have a tax increase. Well, theoretically, if you've grown, you've got new taxpayers, you've got new assets, new homes, all of that should be generating new revenue.
And I guess the study that says, two things on your justification. The issue of saying, okay, we need more police. We need more police for what? Our crime rates in the city, within the city limits, are down. So does that, what are we going? Are we doing a crime prevention program? Are we looking at expanded areas? Because we know that that's going to be curtailed for a period of time because of the new state law. So what are we needing those new police?
Well, and I'm not really disagreeing with that. As I said, I'm not really comfortable with that idea right now. I'm not certain that our police force isn't adequate as it is right now.
Well, let me give you an example that my own daughter said this, which was very interesting. She said, the police we buy every new police officer we hire a car. That's an expensive purchase. Those are expensive cars. Well, we send 2 officers out to each call because the officer needs backup. Well, why do you think New York City puts 2 police officers in each car for backup? Why don't we just put 2 police officers in the car, save the cost of buying that many cars, and have our backup all together? That might actually save us some money.
The argument there is going to be the more cars on the road.
But we have to pay for that.
It's a little more complicated than that.
But my point, Franklin, though, is we never even discuss it. It may be, and maybe I'm wrong. We don't ever have those discussions. We just get told, hey, we need this.
I keep wanting to hear the numbers that say we need, this number of new officers. I also understood that part of the reason we had to have the increase was to maintain the number of officers we have because we had used federal grants. And now those federal grants are going away. And we act like that's a surprise because we know how long the grants are. So that, to me, is a management issue. But getting back then to the schools, all right, if we're having to borrow money for the infrastructure, then we're saying that we don't have school needs for the life of that bond because this money will be associated then with that school. Well, that is okay if you want to say just in a mathematical way. But they're not tracking that. They're not saying we have a new school need every, so many years or so that you know that your borrowing rate will go down and fluctuate because you're going to pay off that bond, and then these funds then should be available for the next need. This is a never-ending cycle because we never address the fact that we don't look at these numbers in a very concrete fashion. That bothers me, and it's just a tax increase to the next time. So I guess my question to Franklin would be, if you're supportive of this, where is that discussion? If you're supportive of the increase for infrastructure, where is that type of discussion?
All right. Thank you, caller.
All right.
Well, we've had a lot of conversations on this show. Steve and I have agreed a number of times about this particular thing. Infrastructure goes beyond just schools. Roads and bridges and drainage projects and so forth are all things that generate economic return and do help grow the tax base, so to speak, bring new industry here, provide more jobs, so forth. Those are all valid investments by community and things that, in my judgment, we haven't necessarily devoted enough resources to.
I don't disagree, but I think what the caller was trying to say was that we don't have any real transparency in the discussions. We don't have any long-term plan. For example, I know that we have fussed in the county, and I know we fussed in the city as well. They have no maintenance schedule. When you build a school, you know that the roof on that school is probably going to have to be replaced in maybe 20 years. Companies will have a fund, and they'll put money in that fund every year. So at the end of the 20 years, they have the money to replace that roof. What we do is we spend money on stuff we probably didn't have to because we don't prioritize well. And then in 20 years, when the roof is leaking on little Tommy, we go to the public and go, you're a mean person if you don't give us a tax increase so we can fix the roof so it doesn't leak on little Tommy's head. Well, guess what? 20 years ago, you knew you were going to have to replace that roof. Why didn't you plan for it?
Let's take a call. Go ahead, caller.
Hey, I read in the paper where David May said we cut everything to the bone. I wonder about the bone. What about the golf course down there? Has anybody ever said what that thing costs the city each year?
No, because then they'd have to justify keeping it.
That's my whole point.
Look, I'll be honest. I don't play golf. Wouldn't bother me a bit to get rid of it. I think we should get rid of it. Having said that, even if I played golf, we should get rid of it. I hunt. Should I demand that they buy a 1,000-acre hunting preserve so I have a place to hunt?
Well, I've looked at that over the years, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, over $1 million was lost in 1 year on that golf course. So, I think look at cutting instead of actual cutting.
I've heard arguments that the golf course is a public park.
I'm not really disagreeing with the caller, but I think what you just said, Steve, gets to the heart of the issue. Tinsley Park doesn't generate money. It's a recreational facility for the community. And if you look at it from a purely budget standpoint, then I guess every dollar we spend on it, we lose. But I wouldn't go so far as to say that's not a good investment for the community.
But the problem is, Franklin, Tinsley Park, two things. What do you spend on Tinsley Park or on Fletcher Park, for example? What do we spend on that? A golf course is a high maintenance item. You have to mow it. You have to fertilize it. You have to do all kinds of stuff. Well,
you've got to mow softball fields, and you've got to restrap tennis courts.
Yeah, but I think they also rent those softball fields.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying that you got to look at it in terms of every expenditure like that costs us money.
Well, personally, I wouldn't have a problem getting rid of a lot of that.
Well, I know you wouldn't, John, and I understand. I respect
that
philosophical side of it. But
somehow the country survived before the government decided they had to do every single thing for us.
But I think Tinsley Park, for example, has been a plus for the community. I think it has made the community a better place to live. I'm glad we have it.
Is it more important than a roof leaking on a child's head in school?
I don't know that we have to make that choice.
No, there's the linchpin of the whole argument. Of course you have to make that judgment. There is a limited amount of money, John, and you have to prioritize.
That's not what I'm saying.
That's exactly what you just said, Franklin.
I'm not. What I'm saying is we don't have to decide whether to have Tinsley Park or to have leaky school roofs.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
There's all kinds of things that we look at.
Let's change it just a minute. We keep Tinsley Park, but we get rid of the golf course to fix the leaking roofs.
I'm not arguing for the golf course here.
I know.
I'm saying that's the context in which you have to evaluate this.
But that's the problem. We don't evaluate it. My wife, when she's on the county commission, and recently Adam Lowe, both have argued for zero-based budgeting. Zero-based budgeting would force us to look at our expenditures every year and say, what's the most important place for our money to go? And that's what we should be doing. But guess what? No one in government, none of the professional politicians want to do that because it would make their jobs hard. And I am so sick of city council members and county commissioners going, well, you wouldn't last very long if you voted to cut that. People would be upset, and that's difficult. Well, guess what? I didn't run for the office. You did. And that's the difficult part of the job. Step up to the plate and do the hard part of the job that's required.
Term limits.
Well, if you had term limits, at least they wouldn't have the impulse of being reelected hanging over them all the time.
That's exactly right. That's why I think term limits are something that would be good for America.
I mean, you think about it as a parent. What's easier, telling your child, yes, you can have it, or no, you can't?
You know it's hard to say no. You mean dad, you.
Well, I mean,
I think we ought to get your kids in here and let them talk on the show.
No, you can have the kids in here if you want to.
We ought to have a kids' day. What do you think?
Mine would probably enjoy that.
Let's see. Franklin, your daughter's how old?
She's 13.
Have you got one around that age?
I've got a 16-year-old and a 22-year-old.
Well, wait a minute. You got to bring something fair.
I'm sorry, I can't get them to regress.
16,
if I could,
16.
I would.
I was going to say bring your kids in one morning.
I'm a lot like my dad. I'll tell you something my dad did. When Jerry Estes ran for DA the first time, it was, I think, 82. I was about 19 years old. And Dad introduced me to Jerry, and this is my dad's thought process. He said, this is Jerry Estes, and he's running for district attorney, and he's a good guy, and we support him, and he's going to be a good DA. But if you screw up, he'll prosecute you up one side and down the other.
Yeah.
That was my dad.
Yeah.
And I've told my kids that. I love you, but if you screw up, you're going to have to pay the price. We need a government that will say, you know what? Like this administration, if you screw up, you're out of here. You got to pay the price. We also need a government that will say, no, we can't afford to do that. Mm-hmm. You know, the county school board, they don't want to talk about how much money they've got saved back. They don't want to discuss the fact that they spent over $5 million on a fine arts building, which was great. But Lake Forest School has been flooding for 20 years. If you looked at that and you said, what's more important? Fixing this school so the kids aren't walking through a foot of water, or building a fine arts building at Bradley. No matter how much you wanted a fine arts building, any reasonable person would have thought fixing the flooded school was more important.
Speaking of DAs, what's going on with Mr. Bebb? I hadn't heard anything in the news lately.
There's nothing in the news.
Is there an investigation going on?
The House and Senate committees are working. I heard that the House committee is working a little bit harder at that. Apparently they're meeting weekly going through the report from the TBI.
Back on the local scene again, animal shelters.
Mm-hmm.
Gary Davis was arguing for the county that a percentage of money or something, the city wanted to have a no-kill zone in Cleveland, and now Bradley and Cleveland are not going to work together on the animal shelter.
The relationship between the city and the county is probably the worst it's been in years.
I mean, now the animal shelter, from what I understand, in the county, if a person has a problem and has to call something about the animal shelter, 911 is going to be directed to call the county policeman. Let the county police go out there and take care of it.
You know how they're going to take care of it?
They're going to shoot them.
Yep. Well, you know what? I love animals. I got all kinds of animals. I got dogs and cats and rabbits and chickens and everything. But country people used to know how to handle this.
Yeah.
And they were able to handle it without the government expending money on their behalf.
But I'm just waiting on all these groups to start protesting.
Well,
we're not doing our no-kill zone.
Well, then those groups can pay for it. Now, let me give some credit here.
Mm-hmm.
The Dixie Day Spay, which is not a government organization, they effectively turned the city into a no-kill shelter in 5 months. They did a great job. Private groups can do these things. If it's that important to the animal rights people, then I'm all for them doing it, and I'll help them. But don't come in and bring the long arm of government in and force me to pay for what you want.
Franklin, you're awful quiet right now.
Well, first of all, I don't know much about this issue. You know, the issue seems to be how the county and city are going to contribute from a revenue standpoint to the animal shelter, which has been providing services out into the county also. You know, I don't know. Do a majority of citizens want this?
I don't know. Maybe they do.
You
Do the majority in the county want it? Now, I will tell you another little-known thing that slipped under the radar here. They cut this from the budget. I think it was $80-something thousand. Guess what they did with the $80,000? Stuck it back in the general fund. Why didn't they pay it down on debt? You know, we talk about how we've got too much debt. I know $80,000 to government, $80,000 is a drop in the bucket, but they stuck it back in the general fund, which means it'll just be blown on something else.
You know, the county, I don't know what their portion was. They had a slightly percentage-wise higher number of animals coming to the animal shelter than the city actually had. And I don't know, did
More territory.
More territory.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
Did they get tied up over the percentages?
well, no, they
paying?
tied up because one hates the other. They've both lost sight of the fact that they work for the taxpayer. They become this mindset of we represent the county, we represent the city. They both represent the taxpayer, and they lose sight of that. You know, this idea of suing each other back and forth. Guess what? The taxpayer pays for all of that.
You think we need metro government?
Well, you know, that's a real difficult one too, because those of us that like small government are afraid of bigger organizations, but at the same time, we also don't like duplication of services. I personally think government, you're going to have the same problems whether you have a metro type government or a city and a county government. And if you've got two governments, I think you got two powerful arms to whack you, to whack you over the head. So I guess I'd almost rather have one that I could at least point at and go, that's the problem.
Yeah. Franklin, what's your opinion?
I think that there are areas where it certainly makes sense. I'm like John for different reasons, but I have some hesitancy about it on a across the board basis. But there are certain things, law enforcement, fire departments, so forth. I don't see any reason why we're benefited by having two different groups.
I mean, this fire thing is such a travesty. I mean, who in their right mind can? And I run into people all the time that go, well, anybody could have merged those and saved money. Anybody except two different branches of a government that didn't want to save any money. They didn't want to protect the taxpayer. They wanted to protect their power and their control.
There's no way that you can tell me that there was any money to be saved.
Well, here's the worst thing.
And separating those.
Well, we're at fault right now, though, Steve. All of the citizens out here are at fault. Every estimate for the county tax or county fire department that was given to us was wrong. And I don't mean wrong by a little bit, wrong by hundreds of thousands of dollars. And nobody on that county commission, when you have two fire trucks and the estimate is several $100,000 less than the cost actually comes in, somebody on that county commission should have said, guys, shouldn't we take a look at this?
Yeah.
Nobody looked. Nobody said anything.
You got to be responsible. We're getting ready to leave here in just a moment, but I wanted to. Interesting story came across my desk. Barack Obama, the ghost of Columbia University. And this guy, Wayne Allen Root, who went to school, attended the 30th Columbia University reunion, which is supposedly the class that Barack Obama graduated from. He personally went around and asked every classmate at the reunion if they had seen or ever heard of Mr. Obama in this school. And he couldn't find a one of them that did. He also went around and talked to people that were in, and he says that the, Columbia University, there was, 700?
Well, actually, his degree is in exactly the same department.
Same degree. 750 people in this class or something like that.
None of them had ever seen him or heard of him.
And, I mean, I could go on and on and on about this, but he said the only person who supposedly knew Barack Obama during this period of time at Columbia University was a left-wing radical professor who hates Israel. And anyway, it's pretty strange, really. I mean, what do you think, Franklin?
So now...
No, wait a minute. What do you think about nobody knows you?
I think that
I think
the person who's being quoted in this is full of crap. Are you going to tell me next that the administration of Columbia University has actively conspired to fabricate the fact that Barack Obama was a student?
No, but I will tell you that they actively conspired to lock his records up, which is illegal, actually. Yeah. None of the other your records are public, but his and Michelle's at both of their colleges have been locked away. Now, Michelle's, one of her term papers slipped out before they locked them down. So I will tell you that they were locked down. Nobody's seen his college records.
Why would those records be locked down? Right.
Well, perhaps he received a scholarship as a foreign exchange student.
First of all, your personal academic records are not public records.
The dissertations are in the library and they're public records.
Interestingly enough, this is the exact same story. It's reared its head again. That was raised about Hillary Clinton 20 years ago.
And
her dissertation was there. So what?
Well, why?
So what? Somebody's 21-year-old writing.
The point is, Franklin, everyone else's 21-year-old writing is accessible in the library. So these people, if they're so open society people and so tolerant, why wouldn't they want someone to read their college dissertations?
Don't know.
Well, maybe the college dissertations reveal something about their character.
Probably, or maybe it reveals something about the news sources that are going to go look into them and making issues about
And this
nothing.
administration obviously wants to control that.
Go ahead. Let's take a call real quick. Go ahead, caller.
Hey, Joe Ball. I just wanted to say hi.
All right. Bye.
Hey, before we get out of here, I do want to say one thing. Politics is one thing, and neighbors and friends are another thing. I'd like everybody to say a prayer for the Armstrong family.
Yes.
Mary Frances Armstrong's husband passed away. A very prominent local business family, legal community family, and political. Eric was chairman of the Democrat Party at the same time I was chairman of the Republican Party, but they're good people, and it's hard to lose a father and a husband, and I hope y'all will keep them in their prayers.
Amen.
All right. Just remember one thing. Something's rotten on the campus of Columbia University, and we'll end our show with that this morning. Thank you, guys.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and Franklin Chansey. Catch them again on Whoop FM at noon today and every Wednesday morning from 7:30 to 8:30. Now, back to more music on Whoop FM.
Since I've seen her face, I still miss her smile. Deep inside me there's an empty place. It's gonna be there